Wagner, W-A-G-N-E-R. I hadn't actually been able to have time to read the environmental impact, but I've gone over, listened to what was proposed tonight. I do have some background in this. I'm a previous Boeing employee. I have worked near SeaTac Airport or Boeing and other organizations, so I know what it's like for that. But it's something I don't think anybody has, that I haven't read anyways, is the impact of what happens if Boeing does leave. Because this airport was here before. It's not a new airport, it's an existing airport. And if Boeing leaves, where are we going to have jobs? I don't want to have to go to Seattle to fly on a plane. I don't like having to drive past Everett. I live in Mount Vernon, I like to fly it. But I also have to balance my life and the needs of the community in my state with jobs and the situation in general. And I don't see this as being a major impact to the degree that people think it is, because Boeing is leaving. That's a given. They're going away, just like my job at Boeing went away.
Number 4, 5, 6.
I live south of the airport. Our prevailing winds generally come from the south in this area, so that pretty much makes it so that I would be, most airplanes would be flying my direction as they take off. I believe it appears as though this, we can see by reading the charts, the conclusions have been drawn. This looks like this is going to happen regardless. And I think that what we should do is focus on the conditions that would make this more palatable. And that is how other airports around the country and world have addressed this issue. One way is curfews. Flights are not allowed during the overnight hours. Another way is strict, measurable noise limits. There are airports in the country and around the world that have placed microphones out in the community, and when airlines exceed noise limits, they pay a fine. They know who takes off when, they measure it. If they exceed, they pay a fine. I also would like to see strict noise abatement procedures put in place for this. That's typically done. An example is Orange County Airport in Southern California. The airplanes get as high as they can while they're over the airport perimeter, and then they level off and just idle until they get out over the ocean, about a mile out there, and then they resume their climb. I think these sorts of things would make this more palatable. I believe one last thing. I was born in Seattle, so if anybody has a right to complain about growth, it's me. But my parents came here because of growth, and this area is going to grow. It's just a matter of whether we do it smart or not.
Thank you. Number 5.
Mike Moore, M-O-O-R-E. I have a number of issues regarding the environmental assessment and even greater concerns about the process. The single-minded focus of the FAA to get airlines into Payne field establishes a disturbing record and pattern. Here are some examples. In November 2005, the FAA stated, and I quote, "We do not force an airport to change its role from general aviation," unquote. But then the FAA threatened, deferred, and suspended FAA funding unless the county did just that. How do we know? 4 words: Freedom of Information Act. Here's a quote from a conversation between a county EDC member and the FAA in February 2009. Quote, "The FAA's manager of Seattle District Office confirmed that the FAA had indeed suspended discretionary grants, and that until there is a deal struck with Horizon for a lease and an adequate terminal, those dollars and any stimulus dollars will not be issued," unquote. That is not what the FAA told Congressman Inslee, however. Here's another example. November 2005, the FAA stated, "The airport is not required to construct or upgrade facilities," unquote. February 2009, they said there will only be funding of an environmental assessment if the county agrees to build a terminal. Again, in November 2005, the FAA was asked, "Can an airport operator charge interested air carriers for all direct and indirect costs?" The FAA answer was, quote, "Generally, yes." But the FAA in April 2009 countered that statement. Quote, "If the county is building a terminal, then it is not typical to charge an airline for construction costs." Finally, here's an example tied directly to the scope of the EA. November of 2005. Generally, the airport may not impose restrictions on the type of aircraft, the frequency of flights, or the time of day of operations, unquote. But the EA does not, this EA does not assess unrestricted flight activity. Rather, it is based on a small number of flights. So in my view, the EA is flawed, the scope is limited, it's designed to show no impacts and therefore no mitigation or indirect costs. We have a right to be frustrated with a public process based on a predetermined outcome. The process FAA was even worried about. Internal communication in 2008, quote, "We may have gotten a bit ahead of ourselves, and I have given the impression that we have made a NEPA finding rather than evaluating the potential environmental impacts," unquote. In January 2009, they produced an environmental assessment timetable that concluded with a finding of no significant impact. This timetable was produced before the environmental assessment had even begun. In conclusion, the FAA should stop threatening the county and undermining negotiations they are not party to. Airlines have not complained, so why should the FAA? The FAA should not distort the market by subsidizing airlines to get them started. Instead, the FAA and airport officials should step up and be honest about assessing all the potential impacts of this federal action within this EA. I close with a question. Are FAA and airport officials really listening tonight, or are they just finishing their checklists?
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Number 6, you're up.
My name is Greg Cow, Mukilteo, Washington. You mentioned there are several conditions under which a new EA might be issued. I'm asking that you do a new environmental assessment right now. The EA is not about small initial conditions that are posed by Horizon and Allegiant. The key thing is it's about changing the airport's operating certificate from a Class 4 to a Class 1 airport. When you go to a Class 1 airport, under FAA rules, there are no restrictions as to type of aircraft, number of flights, or time of day. Curfews and other compromises are not allowed. That means we have to consider the scope of the airport at full capacity at any time, day or night. In addition, the EA is scoped out only to the year 2016. It should be scoped out for a full 20 years, which would take you out to the year 2030. So what we have here is basically, if you put garbage in at the front end to an analysis, you get garbage out at the back end, which is basically no significant impact. If the FAA continues with pursuing a finding of no significant impact, it will really only confirm that this entire process and these hearings are a sham. FONSI means no significant impacts. It doesn't allow you to escape doing proper analysis, and it doesn't allow you to ignore the truth. The FAA has been heavy-handed and coercive throughout this process. Issuing a FONSI now will only confirm that the FAA's process is without merit. We're asking for a new EA now. Thank you.
Number 7, vote please. Number 7, like to speak.